Welcome back to another brand new episode of CPOV Autographs. I am your host, Matt, aka Stormageddon. And before we get into things, I just want to thank everyone for their patience while I took 2 weeks off to kind of get things back on track. I don't foresee that having to happen again, but I appreciate your patience while I did it. Mental health is really important, and I was overwhelmed and needed to take a break. Anyway, this episode is with the incredible Erin Callahan, comedian, actress, friend of Case Aiken, and really all-around awesome human. I was so excited to have her on the show after I heard her on Another Pass, and so I immediately reached out, and I was so glad she was able to come on. She is a comedian and actress based in LA. We talked about how comedy has evolved over the years, the importance of writing and keeping a clear mind and never punching down, and how comedy doesn't have to be low-hanging fruit and the easy joke. And it was really one of my favorite conversations I've had about comedy and creating in a while. And so without further ado, I don't want to take any more time than I've already taken. So here's me talking with the incredible Erin Callahan. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I am chatting with the incredible Erin Callahan, actress, comedian, lover of alien movies, although not the third one so much. So welcome to the show, Erin.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So I found out about you through a mutual friend of ours, Case Aiken, one of the heralds of the podcasting universe. And,
yes, a
My
scion.
co-brother... A scion. Yes, yeah. I like that wording. And my brother in arms over at Certain POV. And after I heard your episode, because I edit Another Pass, I was like, I want to talk to Erin. She's really funny. Can you? He's like, just follow her. She'll follow you back, and then just like we'll make it happen. I'm like, okay. Yeah. And so here we are.
Yeah, here we are. We did it. Mission, we did it. Mission accomplished. The end.
The end. We can all go home now.
Yeah, it's the shortest episode you've ever had.
I mean, I've had some short episodes, but yeah, none that are about a minute and a half. So this would be pretty short. I want to talk a little bit to start about your acting. So I've watched your reel and I've seen some of the cool stuff that you're on. And my first question is, obviously, the pandemic has affected a lot of us and made acting harder, auditioning easier and harder, depending on how you look at it. I'm just curious of what that's been like to go from working pretty regularly to like then having to slow things down. And then, you know, with the pandemic being kind of like, can we work again? Is it okay to work? Is it safe?
Well, first of all, it's very generous of you to characterize my my career as formerly working regularly. That's very generous. I was auditioning very regularly and I was working, occasionally, but yeah, it's, it really, everything was already moving towards self-tape so much anyway, in terms of auditions. Like studios, production companies, they want to spend as little money as possible, right? So they don't want to have to, if they don't have to spend money for an audition space for people to be in person with casting, then they won't. And so it's been the trend for, the last 15 years or so or longer, that increasingly, especially for first auditions, the tape is being done in the actor's home. And we're all just, we're expected to have our own lighting and decent sound and understand how to frame shots. And that's all fine and good. So that part wasn't really too much of a change. It was really mostly just that, production fully shut down for, many, many months, because like you said, people didn't know if and how they could produce safely. And so then, obviously a lot of people lost a lot of money from that. And, that there were a backlog of projects that either are only getting made now or just are not going to get made at all. A lot of people left LA. A lot of people left New York for a variety of reasons that I think we're all familiar with. So, so it definitely changed things in that sense. And just for me personally, it was a big part of why I started getting into stand-up, because it's something that, I can write on my own, and I have a little bit more control over the space that I'm in and the number of people that I'm physically around. So yeah, that's, for me personally, that's been the biggest change that the pandemic sort of heralded.
Yeah, because I noticed, so my spouse is an actress, and they were auditioning fairly regularly before the pandemic, but then at the start of the pandemic, there seemed to be this influx. And I feel like it was because of the self-tapes and the convenience to just reach out people or do auditions over Zoom. They recently filmed something that I can't talk about yet, but I'm really excited for.
Oh,
and
nice.
It's just, yeah, it's really nice to see this kind of shift. Did you see a change in the amount of auditions after things went mainly digital, or do you find that wasn't really the thing for you that changed that scope?
Yeah. Oh man, that's such a good question because, personally, I don't think that was the thing that changed so much. I personally had a change in representation, like right before the pandemic happened. So just by coincidence, I had new agents, and that shift just did not end up being a good fit for me. So I think that personally, like, that's why I actually had fewer auditions, and it wasn't even as much because of the pandemic. But it really goes to something that I think is true for all actors, which is just that you never really know why things happen or don't happen. And it's there's just so many factors that go into every decision. Yeah. So for me, I've been just focused on how this is like a new opportunity for me to be just exercising this different creative muscle that I hadn't really focused on in a conscious way before.
Well, and I want to talk about your starting to write comedy and pursuing stand-up because, like, for me as a creator, podcasting is the thing that could have been affected by the pandemic, but I had been remote. I have other shows with co-hosts, and we had been recording remotely since before the pandemic, so it didn't really affect me.
Right.
But I did feel this need to create more during and shortly after the pandemic started. And I think that comes from when you're a creative person, you need to put that energy somewhere. You can't bottle it up.
Absolutely.
And I mean, look, anyone who knows anything about comedy knows that there have been a ton of comedy specials that have come out during the pandemic. Some not great, and then others that kind of like changed the face of what it's like to do stand up at home. I mean, for me at least, Bo Burnham comes up a lot as like, this is a play that he did that happened to have funny moments and then deeply crushing, depressing moments.
Yes.
When you're writing, especially during this time and starting to pursue comedy in the pandemic, which I feel like is such a unique perspective, was that hard? Did you find that it tended to be darker than you might have thought it would have been because of everything you're experiencing and everything the world is going through? Or did you kind of like just boomerang the other way?
No, it did not. It did not turn out darker than I expected, but that's only because I have always been jet black dark. I have always been a little goblin living in a goblin pit. I that's my sensibility. That's the stuff I like. That's the stuff I've always gravitated towards. So I'm sure that was influenced. I mean, I'm sure obviously like this time in our lives has unconsciously influenced everyone in ways that we're not even going to understand for many, many years to come. But I think regardless of when I started, I would have been talking about abuse. I would have been talking about eating disorders and how I'm not good at them, like stuff like that. I like stuff that's dark. I like stuff that I love that you brought up Bo Burnham because, the way that he grapples with his own privilege and the way that he grapples with the darkness in life. I think a lot of people respond to it, and I certainly respond to it. And I've just always I've always gravitated towards stuff that is frank, about how fucking weird it is to be a human being. Can I curse on this podcast? I'm so sorry.
Yes, you absolutely
okay,
can curse.
Great.
No, 110%. You can fucking curse as much as you want.
Great. That fucking rules. Thanks.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm glad you bring that up too. Like, it's funny. The first time I remember watching the special, so I was not a Bo Burnham fan before the new special. I knew of him, and I thought he was funny, but like I just really followed it. And I have a small group of friends on a Discord that we became friends right before the pandemic. We met at a gaming convention, and then like to stay in touch, created this Discord so we could like play games together and chat. And one of my friends was just like, "Yo, have you seen the new Bo Burnham special? You have to watch it." And so at first I was like, all right, yeah, I'll check it out. I mean, I love comedy, and so I'm always interested. And my spouse, like when we first started watching it, they were like, I don't know about this. This seems a little goofy, and I don't know. But then we hit that like first third, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute. And then the rest of it. And like, I just had never seen anything done like that. And like, I lived that for so long. And then when it came out, because he's such a talented musician, I listened to the soundtrack over and over again, which I'm sure was great for my mental health. Totally awesome for my mental health.
Yeah.
but then like there was this moment where someone said, well, you know, it's not real, right? And I'm like, yes, sure. He wasn't living alone for all of that time by himself in that small apartment. He saw his family. He did, but like he didn't cut his hair, you know, he didn't shave his beard. He did live kind of messily. And the psychological stuff is still real. He just used the physical to kind of show it. And that's something I'd never thought of with comedy before. Has that something that ever occurred to you, of kind of like manipulating your space to tell a story in comedy outside of movies? Because I think that feels like a new frontier.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because it's, you know, so I come from a theater background, and that has always been my number one passion. If I could, I would just be making theater all the time. And when I say making theater, that encompasses, I mean, there are so many things you can do in a physical space, and ideally with other people present in the room, which is the other thing that appeals to me about stand-up, right? Is that it's in person, and it's something that you don't get when you're doing film and TV, right? You get an immediate feedback loop between you and the audience. But, you know, the Bo Burnham special is really drawing on so many, even though it's not live, it's drawing on so many, as you pointed out earlier, it's drawing on a bunch of theatrical traditions that are very, very old. And so in terms of like how space is used, how light is used, how focus is drawn, those are things that I'm always thinking about. I mean, I used to direct theater. I love being in a space with other people and getting to explore whether it's a story in the traditional sense of, you know, beginning, middle, and end and events happening, or whether it's something closer to stand up. You know, there's something that happens when you get to zoom out a little bit and you get to look at all of the pieces that are influencing your experience of the thing. That didn't really make any sense, what I just said.
It made plenty of sense. I understood it.
Okay.
I'm on your level. I get it. Yeah, I mean, I think that something I didn't realize I missed in the pandemic till I experienced it is having people around me, right? I'm fairly introverted. I am what I like to say a performative extrovert. Like I used to host burlesque shows and DJ live events, and like I have a limit. Like imagine a health bar in like a video game.
Totally.
Like, I'm an extrovert until that health bar depletes. And then literally I want nothing to do with anyone ever until I can replenish it.
Right.
But I didn't realize how much I missed that until I did two different things. One was I started streaming on Twitch a little bit. And there was a DJ game that came out called Fuser, which is made by the same people who did Rock Band and Guitar Hero, where you get to mix music on the fly. And being a DJ, I was like, oh, this is exciting. This will be fun. And I ended up doing like live concerts, if you will, for my Twitch audience. And like, I didn't talk much. It was mostly me just mixing music. And like, I would finish and I'd be like, oh God, I did miss that. And then like on even another level, I recently went to see, as of when we're recording, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I am a ridiculous Sonic fan, obnoxiously so. And I enjoyed the first movie and I was like excited for the second one. And like just being in that theater that was still mostly empty, laughing with other people at the jokes. I was like, sure, watching comedy at home with my spouse, we often laugh at a lot of the same stuff, but like it's definitely not the same as going to a theater and experiencing it. I'll never forget the first time I saw Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters, in a movie theater. I was too young to see it when it first came out, but I watched it, I think it was in the 2000s, it was back in theaters. And like hearing what people laughed at that I didn't even laugh at was also fascinating to me. Like, yeah. It's just amazing how differently we can interpret comedy. Do you find that there are kinds of jokes or kinds of comedians or certain things that you just really hone into when it comes to comedy, whether it's a kind of delivery or it's a certain kind of comedian or certain kind of setup? Like, are there, like, do you have favorites that you like really hone in on or like try not necessarily emulate?
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, it's hard for me to get away from thinking about Gilbert Gottfried, because we just lost him today.
We did.
And so, I was watching a bunch of old clips of him, and one thing about him is that he was such a crafts person, and he was so intentional about really, a friend of mine made this point, that he really bridged the gap between like old school vaudeville stuff and like more contemporary, fast-paced, like relatable observational stuff. And he was really interested in why things that are funny are funny. And he was one of the only comedians that I've ever seen who could actually make a joke funnier by explaining it after. And I was watching this old roast of George Takei that he did. And after he told all of these jokes that are basically just about being gay, right? But he explained every joke directly to George Takei after the joke. And it's like a virtuosic thing that he had, that he was so interested in why the things that worked. And he was so smart that he could make everybody else interested in it, and he could communicate it in a way that was in itself funny. And that's really hard to do. It's really hard to explain a joke and actually have that be even funnier than the joke. So yeah, there are lots of people that I admire, but that's the first one that comes to mind. Another thing that I really admire is, again, people who are drawing on other traditions of theater, comedians who embrace like clown, like traditional classical kind of commedia clown. There's this great comedian, Natalie Palamides, and she has a special on Netflix called Nate. She plays this character. It's a male version of her, basically. And it's a piece of theater, it's a one-person show, but it's she's really fusing techniques of stand-up with techniques of clown, with techniques of plays, quote unquote plays. And I love stuff that fuses different disciplines like that.
Yeah. I think for me, as I get older, I lend towards comedians who tell stories also, because I, as a podcaster, tell stories and like to facilitate storytelling. Like comedians like Patton Oswalt, and even back in the day, George Carlin. My favorite thing about old George Carlin, I saw George Carlin towards the end of his life, where he was kind of more angry, and it was a lot of just like expletives and shock value, which was still funny, but not as funny. My dad used to show me these old specials of him. My favorite is the Hippy Dippy Weatherman, right? Because it's a character he created, and it's all body movement. Like the listener can't see it, but I'm doing it. But it's literally all body movement, and that's what you're laughing at. And like
you're doing it really well too. By the way, I just want to point out that they're really. I'm sad for the people who didn't get to see that.
I've seen the special so many times, and like even Eddie Izzard, she is so great because Dressed to Kill is literally just story after story, and it's awkward pauses, and it's taking moments. It's my favorite bit that she does is how you tell a girl that you like them. Do you hit them with French loaf? Like they're so non sequitur jokes.
Yes.
But they work because it's literally, she's honestly telling a story.
Yes.
About not understanding being trans as a child. And at that time wasn't even going by she, her pronouns, like just not understanding herself.
Right.
But making it funny without making fun of being trans, which is brilliant.
Absolutely. Well, and I think something you're pointing at is just, any art form or any piece of art, I think, is always best when it's a really authentic, a fully realized, authentic representation of that person and their voice. And it sounds like an obvious thing to say, right? But so many people, it's an incredibly hard thing to do, because you do have to be very vulnerable, and you have to really go through the terrifying ordeal of being seen as you are. And especially like you pointed somebody like Eddie Izzard, like, as you point out, for her to be like working through that, even at a time when she didn't fully necessarily have a name for what she was working through, right? That level of vulnerability is incredible. Most people's egos cannot tolerate that kind of exposure.
Yeah. And like, I think that there are room for places and characters. I mean, look, like one of the most famous character comedians that I can think of, Andrew Dice Clay, was always this Italian stereotype. But like I saw his later comedy, and while it was still that, like there was still some humanity in it. Is he a good person? Is he a good comedian? It's irrelevant to this. But like in his later stand-up, he even realized like there has to be some of me in it. Otherwise, who's going to listen? Like I turn off to comedians so fast if I even get a whiff of, oh, they're just putting up an act. Like this isn't really who that person is. You know, comedians I've drifted away from like are when they go against my beliefs or feel like they're attacking and punching down rather than, you know, actually telling a joke. I used to love Christopher Titus. I used to think he was hysterical. I loved his work. And I haven't listened to any of his recent stuff, but he had a podcast and he started like punching down at people who played video games, calling them basement dwellers and all of this other stuff. And I'm like I hate gamers as much as the next person and I am one, right? Like most of them are idiot old white dudes who don't know what the fuck they want. But still, like there are better ways to make that joke than just generalizing. Do you find there's a challenge when you're writing jokes to not generalize and make those kinds of assumptions? Or is it because it's more personal to your experience, you're just being kind of true to that storytelling?
I personally just don't. To me, if I'm making a joke that's about someone else, I have to put that much more thought into it, right? Like telling a joke about someone else should be like giving them a gift, like a very, very thoughtful gift, right? Like this is why roasts are so great if they're done well, in my opinion, because it's really flattering to have somebody take the time to craft a really, really thoughtful insult, right? If it's a lazy insult, that's offensive, because what that's saying is you weren't worth the time for me to really sit and think about you, right? So far, most of what I've written is focused on me and focused on my experiences. But I do talk somewhat about, you know, I talk about shitty men online. I talk about ridiculous men on dating apps, and their ridiculous lies about their age that they're not getting away with. That's the number one thing. Like you'll see a guy who says he's 35 and like, I mean, the wrinkles are deep enough to see bone. Like there's like white shining for anyway, you know, but I genuinely feel like anything can be the subject of a joke, but the more harm could be done potentially, the more thought you have to put into it. And if you're not ready, if you don't have all the information yet, if you haven't really sat with the real, like if you haven't talked with people who are members of a population that you're trying to joke about, you're not ready to joke about them, right? If you don't know anything about their actual lived experience, you're not ready to joke about them. So that's sort of my feeling about it, is that, you know, because I'll be booked on shows sometimes, and like there's so much shitty transphobia, especially. Ugh, that's just, and it's beyond being offensive. It's offensive how lazy it is, that you really think you're going to get a laugh by calling Caitlyn Jenner a chick with a dick. Like that's not funny, and it's not new. It's not original. It's not saying anything interesting. You know, sit and think about, like, talk to some actual trans people, like sit and think about what it might be like to live that experience. And if you're not ready to do that, then you're not ready to talk about those people in public, let alone make fun of them. So that's my feeling, is that I won't, you know, if there's a population that I don't feel like I've really spent a lot of time with, then I'm not going to make jokes about them publicly. And if I do make jokes about them publicly, I have to be ready for members of that group to be like, fuck you, that's not funny. And, you know, that's the risk you take.
Yeah, it's the strange thing where comedians and podcasters, I could be thinking of a specific podcaster who talks too much and says bad things, but like they are always like freedom of speech. Yes, it is the freedom to speak. You are not free from the repercussions.
Nope.
Literally, the freedom of speech means you have the freedom to open your damn mouth. But beyond that, you are circumstanced to the repercussions like the rest of us are.
Yep. Absolutely. I was actually on a show that a certain other podcaster who's friends with the podcaster you're talking about, who is like a sort of dollar store brand version of that podcaster. This is a guy who has made most of his money as a quote unquote vaccine skeptic.
Ugh.
Yes. So he did a drop-in set on this show, and he wasn't telling jokes. You know, he was just complaining. He's just complaining about liberals, and people weren't laughing. And, you know, he got really angry about it. And it's just very, I'm like, you're not entitled to laughter from people. Everyone is entitled to respect, basic respect, right? But you're not entitled to have people laugh at your non-jokes.
Well, and I'm a person who, if you make fun of me for being a liberal, for being Jewish, for being bisexual, if you do it well, I'm gonna laugh because I have a sense of humor. But if you if it's the low-hanging fruit, if it's the easiest joke, if you say the word fag in your set anywhere, like, what the hell?
Right.
It's not, it doesn't work.
It's right. It's lazy. It's, you know, by the way, I need to take a second to write down all the things I'm allowed to make fun of you for. Just
great. Please. No. That way, when
kidding.
When I eventually come to LA and meet you in person,
yes,
and come to one of your shows, you can pick me out of the crowd and just pick on me and make fun of me. There's this old joke that Christopher Titus used to tell that I identified with a lot as far as friendship goes. Like, you know, you meet this guy and you see he's wearing ugly shoes and you're wearing an ugly shirt, and you make fun of his shoes and he starts to cry and you're like, I don't want to be friends with that person. But if you find a guy and you make fun of his shoes and he goes, yeah, well, I'll wear this ugly shoes as long as you're wearing that ugly shirt. Best friends.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of sense of humor I have. Like, I know there's a line, and if I cross it, please tell me. But for the most part, I need to be able to make fun of my friends. Like, it's the ribbing is kind of part of the camaraderie that I'm used to. But I also know not to take it that seriously and to speak up when it's gone too far. And I think the problem is comedy's a risk versus reward system as far as I see it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you take some risks, but as long as you're smart about it, usually there will be reward on the other end.
Yes. And
Look at me preaching.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, take everybody to church. It's true. You're everything you're saying is true. And it's, you know, I think the other thing that occurs to me about it just is that, like, it's not such a terrible thing to feel embarrassed if something bombs, right? Like, it's
right. Yes.
That is such a minimal risk, and comedians act like that's like they're going into battle, and it's not. You might be embarrassed. It's really okay. But again, it's the ego death thing, right? Like, people really feel like threats to their ego are existential, and they're just not. It's just your ego. I just got yelled at by like 100 people online yesterday because this other comedian who I really love posted this video where he did a backflip at Universal Studios and it became a whole thing. People misinterpreted it. People thought he was just being a dick and he was doing a whole character thing. Anyway, like, I had people yelling at me and it's, you know, it's not fun. It's unpleasant to have people yell at you, but that's it. It's just unpleasant. It's not dangerous.
Yeah, I think the ego death thing is a big part of it, right? People are afraid to fail, and because we teach our society to not fail, that you always have to succeed. It's something I struggle against constantly. I currently don't have a day job, and every day I torture myself because I'm like, I'm not bringing in what the capitalist society decides is a sufficient amount of income.
Yep.
And like, I have to tell myself, well, I'm doing editing here, I'm working on this thing there, I'm going on this trip. Like, I'm figuring it out. But like, we live in a world where you have to succeed, and success has to be famous or most rich or whatever else. And it's not that simple. I barely dabbled in stand-up. And what I mean barely dabbled is I used to host burlesque shows, which I call the amateur comedians, because if I bomb with a joke, I go, and now here's the next naked person. Right. And you'll forget all about me. I won't even matter. And like, There are times where I would tell jokes that I thought were hilarious that would just completely sink. And then there were other one-offs, throwaways that I would throw out there, and like everyone would lose it. And I'd go, really? That's the joke? That's the one? Have you ever had that experience like doing stand-up where you like think this joke isn't anything, but all right, I'll throw it out, and people lose their minds?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it really is. I mean, that's the thing, is that you're not the gauge. And it's a trip every time it happens, right? Because you write stuff that you think would be funny, right? And that's a good way to write. I think like people should be thinking about what they find funny, and again, that is part of what keeps it personal and authentic to them, right? But ultimately, every group of people is different, every room is different, every night is different, and it's the same in live theater too. And that's another thing that I have always loved about live theater, is that you're not the gauge there either. Like there have been times when I've been in plays and I've felt like really in it, like, oh man, like I'm really like killing this scene, and like people are checked out. And then there have been other times when I'm like, man, I suck tonight. Like I am not, like I feel like a hack, like I'm doing the worst acting of my life, and people are like, oh my God, like I was so moved by it. You don't know. People are taking in so many different bits of information, and you're just not in control of it. You're not in control, and you have to be willing to release your control, and you release your expectation of what other people are going to get out of it.
Yeah, totally. I want to go back a little bit. You've done some acting, you're now working on comedy. When you were in school, was that always like you wanted to be a performer? When you were a kid, were you the kid who was at the center of attention and wanted people to laugh? Or is that like something you discovered later on?
It was pretty, I mean, by the time I was like in middle school, and certainly in high school, I was pretty certain of what I wanted to do. So yeah. And like, I did the very dumb thing that I don't recommend to anyone listening, by the way, of getting degrees in acting. Don't do that. It was a great experience, but it's not, it's just, again, we live in the capitalist society that we live in, and it's not a cost effective thing to do. So, don't do it. Certainly don't go to grad school for it. Yeah, I mean, again, I think the thing that I learned that I really loved most is, I mean, granted, I definitely love attention. That's, I won't lie about that, but I think what I love most especially is just being in a room with other people making something. And whether that's being in a room with an audience who are really part of what you're making, even when you're doing stand-up, right? It is a feedback loop. You can't do anything without their presence, without their listening. Whether it's that, or whether it's, doing a play, or rehearsing for a film, or shooting TV. I love making things with other people. Yeah.
There's something to that collaboration that I feel like is unlike anything else, especially once you get the bug for it and wanting to make stuff. You can't turn that off. Like for me, I already host 4 podcasts. I edit like 3. I produce a bunch also. And it's like, no more podcasts, Matt. You are doing
right.
Too many. I can speak from experience. We were recording right before I go out of town for 2 weeks. And like the amount of editing I had to do on top of each other just to get everything done for that 2 weeks before I could go. Madness. But I too, as you can tell, I too like attention, obviously. But I can't turn off my brain when, well, I could do a podcast about this, or this would be a really great idea for a show. Do you find your brain doing that? Like, especially with either writing comedy or like wanting to make shorts or do theater stuff or improv or anything like that? Like, do you just find your brain kind of going and you're like, I don't know how to channel this?
Sometimes I think I've had more success channeling it the more I try to keep it simple, and like, and honestly, things like TikTok have helped me with that, because TikTok they're so short and they're so stupid. Like I've recently just started making these TikTok duets because I discovered actor TikTok, which is horrible.
Oh yeah, the acting challenges.
Oh my God, it's a hellscape. It's they're deeply upsetting how bad they are. So, but that's just like a little quick thing that I can do that just kind of keeps the muscle working and doesn't trap me in a sort of morass. I don't know how to say
morass.
That word that's spelled MORASS, so that I don't get trapped in a swamp, right, of like self-doubt and hesitation about where to put all the ideas. I feel like it just, if I have an impulse to do something, the faster I can just get it out of my system, the better.
Well, I just followed you on TikTok, so you can give me that old follow
thanks.
back.
Oh yeah,
chance, so I can watch your comedy. I make a TikTok like once every 3 weeks, and usually it's whatever trend like people are duetting and doing stupid shit on, and I'm like, I can do that. Though there's one I've been waiting to do. This past October, I did something I thought I would never do. I cosplayed as Luigi from the Mario Brothers.
Oh my God, amazing!
Like full with, I had a beard and I shaved it into a mustache, which my spouse was like, I don't know about that. And then I kept it for a little while, and she was like, all right. That's all right.
Commitment. I mean, that's real dedication. I like that.
My favorite thing is I have a co-host on my video game podcast, Jeff, and he had a Waluigi costume already. So for a hangout, we were Waluigi and Luigi.
Yes.
But anyway, there's a famous TikToker who does a ton of cosplay, and recently had done a bunch of Princess Peach TikToks with like Luigi having dialogue on it, but Luigi not being in the scene. And so like, I want to duet them dressed as Luigi.
Yes.
But, like, it's a whole production, and it's like, mostly I just want to sit on my couch and like do smash or pass. Like, I don't want to put that much effort into it.
Right. A new TikTok trend that I just saw that I really like is people in the UK, or like tourists in the UK, posting videos of like, why do British people do this, or like, why do British streets have and then it'll cut away to somebody with like, they'll find a JPEG of like a monster or something that has just more teeth than you could possibly imagine. There's just like teeth everywhere, and they'll go, well, at least we don't get shot in our schools when we're going to mathematics, or like something just like the most horrible English accent ever. Which I really enjoy. That's another thing. But yeah, TikTok's
Are you a fan of horrible accents?
Well, I'm actually a dialect coach, is like my kind of
awesome.
One of my main money gigs. So yeah,
that's awesome.
I'm a huge fan of accents and dialects generally.
My spouse did dialect coaching for a long time.
Oh, that's awesome.
And took it in school and stuff. Yeah. I'm always fascinated by it because I can't do it. Like, I can on a good day do a Southern accent, whatever that means. But like beyond that, and they've tried to teach me, but like the way you roll your R's and how my brain can't make my tongue do the things it needs to do to produce the different sounds. I don't know why.
For me, I always like, with my students, I always try to do like oral and visual and kinesthetic. And so I try to have people, it's very, very nerdy, but the International Phonetic Alphabet is very, very helpful for learning this stuff, because you can actually like learn symbols for each little sound that your mouth is capable of making, and get very granular about it. And it helps. But yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. Let's talk about your comedy writing and performing live. Do you have any interest in recording a comedy album or doing like comedy tours, that kind of stuff? Do you think it's still too soon with COVID? I know me personally, like I'm flying to New Orleans as of when we're recording in a few days. And like, I'm excited. I'm going for a friend's wedding, but I'm also nervous because I have yet to be on a plane since the pandemic started. How are you feeling about all that stuff and like next steps for your comedy?
I mean, the main thing is I'm interested in all of that, certainly. Touring for sure. I love traveling. I love going to different places, and I've loved being booked on shows with different comics, because it's just a really cool way to get to see other people's work, and everybody's bringing so many different things to their work. I mean, in terms of like recording an album and stuff, it feels very early for me in the sense that I just straight up don't have enough material yet for that. I probably have, at this point, I probably have like a really good 15 minutes and like a very mediocre 30, like very like questionable, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
because like I mean, I go to mics all the time, and I go to, and I get booked on shows, and it's just like, to get material to a level where it's really worthy of recording is just a lot. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of refining, and it's a lot of, I mean, it's just so much editing. I mean, and I think people say this about every type of writing, that, writing is editing, but I mean, it's editing that you can't, with stand up, you can't really do the editing in a vacuum. You have to do it in front of an audience. You have to just test it and test it and test it and test it. So, I mean, we'll see where I am in a few more months, as far as how much material I have. But, right now I'm mostly just focused on getting more known in the LA scene, and just getting more and better material.
Have you ever worked out any material on stage, like found a joke that sort of came to you in the writing, but then really got perfected in the performance?
Oh yeah, I would say almost all of them. That's how they go down. I mean, that's why comedians have to go to open mics so often, and you really just don't, you have an idea about what's funny about it, right? But then again, you have to, it's not complete until you get the feedback that, okay, what most people are finding funny about this is actually this aspect of it, so I need to beef this up and get rid of some of the other stuff, or I need to, I mean, it's just, you're just constantly editing based on feedback, and unfortunately your editors are strangers, and they're strangers that you can't just, you can't call them up like an editor that personally. You have to just keep putting yourself in rooms with these strangers and have them help you edit.
I'm curious if there are jokes that you've written that no matter what you do, how you change them, how you work with them, they still don't hit. You just can't find the right form with them. And how do you attack those kinds of jokes?
I mean, so far I've mostly just abandoned them. At a certain point, it's just
Fair
not
enough.
worth it to
Yeah.
like try to make this bestiality joke work. Like, it's just not, like, yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind, is this joke I was really trying to make work. And it was about how I was, oh God, see, now I'm going to end up telling the terrible joke, and it's not going to land for anybody. And everyone's going to be like, yeah, it's good that you abandoned this. Just about like how weird some phrases are, some sayings are. And so the one that I was thinking of was like, screwed the pooch. Like, you really screwed the pooch on that one. And how I like don't understand who came up with that. Why were they thinking about, like, because like you can't fuck a dog by accident, but that saying is meant to mean that like you made a mistake and you screwed up. But anyway, so like I said, that's one that I've abandoned because it's just never, it's never worked. People don't want to hear about people fucking dogs. And I think that's totally fair. And I respect that. I respect that. So yeah, I think it's, I mean, really, anything I've ever tried to do or make, I think the biggest lesson for me thus far in my life is just to always keep trying to check my ego. And the more I find that I'm really wanting a joke to land and it doesn't, and it doesn't, and it doesn't, and I keep trying stuff to make it work, I think probably the smartest thing is to just be like, it's just not. And I just have to take the L. I have to just accept that this is not, if there is a joke here, I don't know how to make it work. At least I don't know how to make it work yet. So I should probably just move on to something else.
That seems legit. That seems like a fair way to
think.
You mean I don't have to completely bludgeon myself to death with this one thing? I can move on?
You don't have to. You have the choice. You can. You absolutely can. Yeah. You can self-immolate. Yeah.
Oh, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen in real time from time to time. I know we talked a little bit about Gilbert Gottfried, who we lost today as of when we're recording. But were there any other comedians that you can think of that were like either really big inspirations when you were growing up, or even people you look to now that you really love?
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, so many. Just off the top of my head, I mean, Mitch Hedberg,
Hell yeah.
the king of one-liners. I mean, if he were around when Twitter I mean, he would be the undisputed king of Twitter.
Yeah, without a doubt. He was doing tweets before we knew
Yeah.
what tweets were.
Yeah, exactly. He was telling jokes in 140 characters. I mean, it's or I guess it's 280 now, whatever. Anyway, he's yeah, he was one of the all-time greats. I love Hannah Gadsby. I know it's very like unfashionable now to like comedy that's also doing the heart-wrenching thing too,
Yeah.
but I do the people who do it well. There's another great comedian and storyteller named Daniel Kitson, who's English, who I love, who is just, I mean, people should look up his stuff on YouTube because he's incredible. But there's a lot of, I mean, I love a lot of people in sketch too. Like I love Sarah Squirm or Sarah Sherman, who's on SNL now, and she's like one of the weirder people, but she, her live stuff is great. James Austin Johnson, who does the best Trump impression that anyone has ever done, who's on SNL right now. He's amazing. And I mean, it's like I'm thinking of friends of mine, and I'm thinking about if I want to promote anybody, but no, there's just there's so many people doing different things with comedy. I mean, like I said before, Natalie Palamides is amazing. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when I was growing up, I guess I really wasn't, this sounds bad to say given that I'm doing stand-up now, but I wasn't like a fan of stand-up. I mean, I loved stand-up, but it wasn't like something that I was necessarily drawn towards. I was much more drawn towards like scripted comedy. Like I loved we never had cable when I was growing up. We were a 7-channel household, so I watched a lot of PBS, and so I watched a lot of British, a lot of Britcoms, like The Vicar of Dibley, and like stuff that I just did not understand at all, but still found funny, because it has the rhythms of a joke, so when the laugh is, and you're like, I don't know why this is funny, but it is. Yeah, so really just anybody who's doing something that's their own thing, I mean, Eddie Izzard, of course. Yeah. Anybody who's really like bringing their full selves to their work.
Yeah, I feel like and I said this a little bit earlier, as I've grown up, I feel like obviously my taste in comedy has grown, but like I've had less and less patience for people who just want to punch down or make inappropriate jokes. Like your Dave Chappelle's, your Kevin Hart's, if you like, whatever, it's fine. But like, I don't like, it was funny. Actually, I came around on some comedians that I used to love and who were inappropriate when they were like watching comedies. I never thought that Coming to America, the sequel to Coming to America, would make me laugh so hard. But you watch Eddie Murphy, it's a transformation. He knows where he's come from. He knows where he struggled. And he's so funny in that movie, being the guy who's like, I've been through hell and I know it, and let me teach you. And like, I think that kind of comedy evolution has been incredible to see. It's why I keep bringing up Eddie Izzard. Like, she has had so many comedy specials, and every time I feel like she's just learning more and more, not only about herself, but about how to tell jokes, how to tell stories. And that's my favorite kind of comedy, is the stuff that you can see evolve. I mean, I went back and watched all of Bo Burnham's old stuff on Netflix after watching the new one. And the old stuff is funny. There are great moments, but like, he's at a turning point now. Inside is a different way to do comedy, and I think he knows that. And like, how do you tour after a show like that, right? Like, that's a stage production. You could do that live from start to finish as a stage production. And like, what is that for comedy? Can comedians now create stage production that then they can sell, like Blue Man Group style, to other comedians to perform in the role of Bo Burnham or something, right? Like, well, I mean, that's just that's not something I ever thought of before.
Mike Birbiglia has been making shows like that, kind of for a while. And, and then this is kind of a different aspect of what you're talking about, but one of my favorite comedians right now, Atsuko Katsuka, she, like, her shows always have like a lot of movement and dance, like a huge dance component. She'll get like backup dancers, and she'll get, I mean, she's great. And she's another like TikTok, I mean, she's a queen on TikTok. But yeah, I mean, there are people who are doing whole, like, full productions, you know, which I love. Like thinking about the whole experience, right, for an audience member, from the time you come into the club or the theater to the time you leave, and not just the chunk of time when this person is standing in front of the mic, right, but the whole like theatrical experience.
Yeah, totally. Before we wrap up, I have a question that I've been asking a lot of my guests lately. While we are still continuing to live through a seemingly never-ending global pandemic, please wear a mask, please get vaccinated, please get boosted if you can. And by if you can, I mean if you are over the age of 3, I think it is now. Like, whatever the age is. Like, if you're over that age, get the damn vaccination. But all of that out of the way, I believe that it's important to look at silver linings during hardships like this. You know, we've all struggled on a multitude of different levels for a multitude of different reasons during the pandemic, but there's been good that's come out of it. And I'm curious if there's a single moment or a thing or an idea that you can think of that came during this time that you might not have come to or found or discovered without having been home more or having to go through this pandemic.
Wow. Oh, that's such a great question. No. Well, like, what if I did, right? What if I was just like,
right?
No, next.
Next.
Yeah. You know, I think it's interesting when I think about that question. For me personally, I had some personal upheaval that was not related to COVID, that just happened at the same time. And I think because it happened, basically, long story short, I had my heart broken. And I think what I've kind of learned from it that's been useful is just that everything you do is a risk. Everything you do in life, every like human connection is a risk. And we need that. You know, we need those human connections, and we need, when we've gone for a year, 2 years without them, or when we've only had those connections, but they've looked very different, right? We felt that. You feel the difference. And I guess it's just made me feel like it's even more worthwhile to take those risks and put yourself out there. And, you know, both in terms of like professional goals or artistic goals, but also just with individual people in your life. And it's something that I realized I really hadn't done in a personal way before. I really hadn't put myself out there with anybody. So I had never had my heart broken before. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it was just like, it was something I realized that like, oh, I never like let myself really love somebody in that way. And like, it was still worth doing, even though I had my heart broken. It was like, okay, there's something there for later.
Self-realization and learning is an important part of this pandemic, and you are not the first person to bring that up. I'm sorry you got your heart broken, but they're not on this podcast, and you are.
Yeah.
So screw them.
Suck it.
But no, I think that we've all had those human moments, right? Like, I'm very lucky to be married and have been with my spouse for a long time, and I know tons of couples who are like, oh, how do you not kill each other? I'm like, because we have a healthy relationship. Like, of course we fought. Of course we had issues. Like, that's everybody. But like, yeah, I think there's a sense of self-discovery and understanding that we could only get through living through this catastrophic event that is still ongoing. And I think it's important to recognize that stuff. And I'm sure a lot of that stuff only continues to fuel the fire for your work and the things that you're doing. And I hope that you become rich and famous so you can throw it back in that person's face. If nothing else.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. Unfortunately, I don't feel that way about, you know, I don't.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But yes, that's a fun fantasy.
I mean, I think great success is deserved anyway. I think you're hilarious. So if nothing else,
thank you.
You've earned my fanship today. Erin, thank you for taking the time to chat with me. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much. Likewise.
Before we wrap up, I would love for you to tell folks where they can find you online, where they might be able to see you live. Be aware that this is going to be out towards the end of the month. So if you have exact dates, you may want to keep that in mind. But otherwise, if you have a location, they can find that information. Pitch away, plug away.
Amazing. Thank you. So all of my exact dates for things will have passed by the time that this airs. So I will just say that generally you can fairly regularly, if you're in the LA area, you can see me doing stand-up at Flappers in Burbank and at the Hollywood Comedy in Hollywood and various other places. And I will post dates on all of my socials, which you can find at my handles on Instagram and TikTok are at DINGOZ, the number 8, MIBABY. Dingoes Ate My Baby, because I have a very common name. And so variations of my name were all taken, but I was able to get a variation of my name on Twitter. And my handle there is at Erin, ERINM, as in Michelin star, Callahan, CALLAHAN, at Erin M. Callahan on Twitter. Yeah, and that's where you can find me.
Go follow Erin in all those places. It is absolutely worth your time. I think that you are phenomenal. So everyone else should go discover that as well. The last thing I'll ask you to do is we have a saying on this show. It's born out of my now on indefinite hiatus music podcast that I no longer do. But the idea is that as long as you're making something, as long as you're creating, no matter how hard life gets, it won't be that bad because you're pouring yourself into something you love. So the phrase is, music is life and life is good. So if you say that for us now, we can wrap up the show.
Music is life and life is good.
That's it for this episode of CPOV Autographs. Our theme music is by Michael Kill. Our logo was designed by Case Aiken and Joey Amons. If you liked the show, please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. It's a great way to help us reach more listeners. Questions, comments, or guest recommendations? Email mr.matt.storm@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at CPOV Autographs. Thank you so much for listening.
Hey, Nerf herders.
You sure you want to go with that?
Hey, everyone.
There we go. More inviting.
Have you ever had a movie that you really wanted to love, but something holds you back?
Or one that you did love in spite of a flaw?
Well, I'm Case Aiken.
And I'm Sam Alisea.
And on Another Pass, we sit down with cool guests to look at movies that we find fascinating.
But flawed.
And we try to imagine what could have been done when they were made to give them that little push.
We're not experts. We just believe in criticism.
Constructive criticism.
Sure.
So come take another pass at some movies with us.
And every now and then, we can celebrate movies that did it on their own, too.
You can find us at certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Pass it on.
CPOV.
certainpov.com.